I do think Buffett is the greatest investor. And the reason why I believe that is, just that this is a 50-odd year, it's a 60-year track record of compounding at 20+% with a very modest amount of leverage, in the form of principally insurance float. And I just don't think there's a record that compares. And I also think that what he does actually creates value for the world. I think George Soros is an incredible investor, but I think what he does as an investor creates no value for the world. No, I think what he does as a philanthropist, I think he creates a lot of value. So I think Buffett has the benefit of, I think Heinz will be a much better business by the time, as a result of Buffett's ownership. You look at what he did with Geico since he bought it. I think he's created enormous, he's bought businesses well, but not incredibly well as he's gotten to be quite large, but he's made those businesses much more valuable. And I think he's also created a lot of messaging that's affected the way people think about executive compensation and derivatives. So I think he's made an enormous contribution. So I think it's a combination of long-term, kind of longitudinally, and the accomplishments he's had. So I think he's the best, by far the best. A hedge fund manager compared to a institutional manager is compensated largely based on the profits. So we get 20% of the profits from managing capital. Now, what a hedge fund manager does is very, very broad. It's everything from being an activist shareholder to being a commodity trader to being a macro trader to being a short seller. So it's really a compensation structure as opposed to an asset class, and people sort of make that mistake. My thoughts on insider trading, I think it's very bad for the hedge fund industry to have a story every day in the newspaper about some hedge fund manager who's either accused of insider trading or has committed insider trading. I think that's an unfortunate thing. There's some interesting debates as to whether there should be something. There are people who have made the argument that insider trading should be legal. In fact, that would increase the chances that security prices accurately reflected their value if all the inside information was allowed to come into the market by participants. I think the problem with those kind of arguments is that if people believe the markets are unfair or a rigged game, then the largest source of capital in markets, which is the retail investor, will basically step out of the market. And so I think the rules are generally the right rules. The problem I have with a lot of the regulation, at least the way it works in the United States, is there's a lot of people who are accused of a crime where that accusation is made in a very public way, it's leaked by a regulator, etc. And that puts enormous pressure on the individual to settle, and also harms them reputationally in their business and otherwise. And the government has enormous power versus any individual. And I think that dynamic is a bit of a dangerous one. And I think all investigation should be private. And if ultimately someone's adjudicated to have committed a crime, then fine, it should be in the newspaper. But I think this notion of using the press, and again, I don't know Steve Cohen well at SEC Capital, but if you followed the press on SEC Capital, ultimately, with respect to Steve Cohen himself, there was never any evidence presented, at least publicly, that he was guilty of anything. But there was enormous pressure brought to bear on him, to settle, and it destroyed his business. And we'll never know, it takes years to find out whether someone's guilty or not. So I think that whole dynamic is a very unfortunate one.